When they first asked me to do this talk, one of their first questions to me was, "Why did it take you so long to come forward?" You see, in 2005, when I was 19 years old, I was raped. I was drugged and raped by a Filipino celebrity who is still on TV today. They asked me, why didn't I come out sooner, knowing that this man was a rapist and could possibly do more harm? I think that all rape victims go through that process in their head. The conflict between coming forward and exposing a criminal of the worst kind and staying silent for their own sanity and protection. Being raped is one of the most horrible, one of the worst violations of the human mind, spirit, and body. The traumas that victims experience have been compared to the kind of trauma that soldiers are exposed to during war. Being raped is terrifying. The human mind is not equipped to deal with it or process it without help because it is an unnatural thing. Sex, contrary to popular belief, is not an innate need in people. It is not like breathing, eating, or sleeping. We do not die if we do not have sex. Therefore, rape is purely a choice by others to inflict harm on another human being, to take something from them without consent. It is very much a power and control issue rather than a sexual one. When a person chooses to abuse another, the victim goes into shock. They often feel very confused. Feelings of guilt, shame, and self-blame are some of the first reactions, because how does one explain to themselves that another human being wanted to hurt them? How do they understand that it is not their fault? It seems as though there is a flaw in the system. People are quick to judge and say, oh, well, so many people fake being raped. As if they know this to be true, right? On the contrary, in a study done in the United States a few years ago, they found that only 2% of all reported rape cases were found to be false, which means that a whopping 98% of them were true. Yet still people claim that most rape cases are fake. Here in the Philippines, we've never had a survey on how many reported rape cases are fake, and I'll tell you why. As it stands, we only have a very small fraction of the actual number of rapes in the country because people are still too afraid to come forward about having been raped. Our culture of shame and saving face have meant that most victims would rather live and die in silence than face the backlash of society's judgments on something as horrific as rape. You see, in our country, instead of crucifying the rapist, we nail the victims to a proverbial stake and we throw stones. Now, how do I know this to be true, you might ask? Well, I'm going to tell you. In 2014, I read a news headline in which another woman accused the man who raped me of having done the same thing to her. Reading some of the comments against the woman, which included statements such as liar, whore, attention seeker in them, I was outraged. I took to social media and I fought back, telling people they had no right to treat her that way, that they had no idea who a rapist was or could be, and that they shouldn't promote rape culture. Privately on my personal Facebook, I wrote a message of celebration. Karma from the universe, justice finally after 9 years. Of course, someone leaked my statements to the press, and my life was destroyed. And I had known all along that this is what would have happened had I come forward. You see, a few years after I was raped, I had spoken to a friend of mine who was also in the showbiz industry. To my surprise, I discovered that she and I had been through a similar experience, and that her perpetrator is a very good friend of the man who raped me. She told me, this kind of stuff happens all the time, but you can't talk about it. If you do, you won't work in the industry anymore. 9 years later, after another woman claimed to have been raped, by the man who raped me, I found out just how true that statement was. I stopped working, and not by choice. I was in the running for several jobs that I was supposed to host for, and they all dropped me. I couldn't get hired for anything. My management, they tried to save me. They tried to get me to retract my statements and stay quiet, but the damage was done. No matter how professional and experienced of a host I was, it meant nothing. The industry I had grown up in since I was 18 years old had chewed me up, spat me out, and left me out in the cold, just like I had known would happen all those years ago. And as if that wasn't enough, I was publicly destroyed, bashed by thousands of people calling me horrific names. My family and friends disappeared, and I was too scared to even be home alone by myself. I even received death threats for speaking up. Now, some people might ask, why keep speaking up then? Why continue this battle if it has cost you so much? Why not just stay quiet and walk away? Or my favorite, why don't you just file a case? It's interesting that I worked for the same media company as my rapist all those years ago, because I was given very clear insight into the behind-the-scenes operations when it comes to something as scandalous as this. I suppose when you control the news and media, it is very easy to cover these things up. We all know how much fear is a factor in keeping people quiet here in the Philippines. I have seen and heard things that would make you never want to watch our television stations again. Women and men being groped and molested, raped and abused. Verbal abuse is a regular occurrence and is treated as the norm. Why don't you hear about this? Because the people that talk about it lose their jobs. That's why. In a country where people are uneducated and poor, many would rather sustain their families than be a hero. They also turn a blind eye to it because they know that the higher-ups are going to do nothing about it. Celebrities who abuse, rape, and molest are allowed to continue this behavior because they are protected by the people that they work for. Much like the recent ousting of priests for pedophilia worldwide being ignored by the institution they represent. The uncovering of Jimmy Savile's pedophilic encounters ignored by the BBC, and the many alleged victims of Bill Cosby, only now feeling brave enough to come forward, also being slandered in the press. Sexual predators are very good at hiding in plain sight, in positions that offer sufficient power to get away with their crimes, especially in a country like ours, where corruption infects every vessel of the government's beating heart.